He'd largely forgotten the entire escapade from yesterday in the café and the changing rooms at the boat club, but still couldn't get the thought of Andy out of his mind. It was driving him insane. There was something so incredibly attractive about him, and further to that, he was certain he'd seen the same scar on the oblique and tattoos somewhere else. He wasn't one to perseverate on things, and he wasn't typically an obsessive person over someone, as he was about this Andy person. But there was something very attractive about him. At that very moment, Freddy was somewhat preoccupied as he was late for a lunch meeting at Bishop's, a quaint little restaurant on Fulham Palace Road in West London. It was nestled slightly above the river on the main road and was the intended spot for a brief lunch meeting with a client from the architecture firm he was trying to build a relationship with. He'd just crossed over Putney Bridge, narrowly avoiding getting ran over by one of those damned e-scooters which seemed to flail around either side of the road dangerously and unpredictably. Why did they always do this? It was so frustrating. As a cyclist, there were enough dangerous drivers on the road without some annoying bloody e-scooter distracting him like a plague-ridden rat. He could do without it. This was an important meeting, and the last thing he needed was to have an accident and miss it. He was slightly sweaty, but it was a cool, windy day, so the smell of the Thames was pleasant kind, which meant the tide was rising, and therefore masked the intense smell of rotting debris, mud and slime that it usually reeked of when it was at its lowest. God knows what's in that water, over thousands of years of human inhabitation. He shuddered at the thought of it. Fortunately, he was used to the Thames and the bizarre plethora of decaying matter that it contained. But still, he did try to avoid thinking about it too much. He'd arrived at Bishop's with around 10 minutes to spare. Perfect timing, as it meant he could cool down and remove some of the extra layers he'd accidentally worn. It was a mixed crowd today, and being a Friday was busy with middle-aged ladies who clearly flocked here solely for the cheap Prosecco deal which the establishment offered between 3 and 5 p.m. A happy hour which delighted most of the more economical housewives of Chelsea who wouldn't be seen dead in a Wetherspoons, but were just as happy paying for spumante and pretending it was real champagne, or worse, that they actually enjoyed it over a bottle of Tattinger. Class was a curious thing, often broken down and ridiculed by the price of wine. Many of the middle-upper classes largely ignored expensive champagne, preferring the cheaper stuff in reality, but pretending they were too good for anything better. A small convenience that suited their own contradictory social mores while preserving the banker's bonus their husbands didn't want them to spend. Bishop's also had the added bonus of being a breeding ground for cute rowers. He had chosen it strategically a few weeks ago to meet with Isaac, a young account manager from Anthony Searcy & Co., a Fulham-based architectural firm which specialised in office block renovations and restoring Art Deco buildings to their former glory. He wasn't exactly thrilled to have a meeting at 3 p.m. on a Friday, but it gave him a good excuse to start drinking early, especially as he didn't have training the following day. This meant he could have a few glasses of champagne or a martini without worrying, which, by a happy coincidence, would lubricate the work meeting and make it more tolerable. Isaac was also incredibly cute, meaning he could flirt slightly and perhaps even take him home after and fuck him. In my dreams, he thought to himself. Perhaps one day. He ordered some oysters which came from Prince Edward Island on the east coast of Canada. A rarity in London, but they had a sweetness he couldn't resist. Besides, his work was paying for the whole thing. As he waited for the Malpecs to arrive, along with a glass of Tattinger, he glanced over at his bike, which was safely locked up beside him. It wasn't exactly a child to him, but he could imagine being less obsessive over a baby if he did have one. His road bike meant the world to him. Sitting outside meant he could keep an eye on it while enjoying the sun and listening to the inane banter of the pill-popping Chelsea housewives. He wouldn't typically pay 3 or 4 quid for an oyster, but seeing as it was a Friday and he was going to quit his job in a few weeks, he didn't see anything wrong about it. Besides, it would give the housewives something to gossip about. They loved the performative nature of eating out more than the act of consuming food, meaning they'd enjoy seeing a hunky rower in a nice outfit and study his movements closely as he proceeded to drink at least 2 bottles of champagne over the entire lunch. He sat around for 10 minutes and started to think about the guy he'd met the prior evening at the boat club. His name was Andy. He was definitely on the development squad and saw him out on the river in a quad. He didn't look like the most technically proficient rower, but he did have power behind the oar, which might transform into something meaningful one day. He tried to avoid thinking of his crewmates in a sexual way, but in this case he couldn't help it. There was something incredibly attractive about him, being either the tattoos, the muscles, or perhaps how good he'd looked in underwear when he'd been standing across from him in the changing room the prior evening. The waiter brought over a second glass of champagne at the very same time as he received a notification on his phone. He checked briefly and saw that the meeting had been cancelled as Isaac was trapped in traffic just outside Battersea. He was mildly annoyed, but also largely nonplussed about this development. It meant he could enjoy champagne and the Malpec oysters from Prince Edward Island in peace. That crisp brioche taste of Tassinger complemented the breeze which cooled him down whilst he was sitting out in the afternoon heat, exposed to the sun. Life was good, he thought to himself, as he reclined, flexed his muscles and observed the housewives watching him giddily from across the outdoor area.